Today is September 28th, 2020, and you're watching Horseshoe Politics. In a video that I made last week, I talked about my prediction for the 2020 presidential election. Basically, in that video, I went through each state in the 2020 presidential election that was voting, including Washington, D.C., and I talked about which candidate I thought was most likely to win each of those states, and overall, I kept tally of how many electoral votes each candidate was getting in the presidential election, and I came to the conclusion that Joe Biden had a better chance of winning than Donald Trump overall. I would like to do a similar sort of video for today, but instead of doing it for the presidential election, I'd like to do it for the Senate election, 2020 Senate election. As of now, Republicans have 53 seats in the Senate, while Democrats only have 47 seats in the Senate, and that's if you include Bernie Sanders and Angus King, who are independents. If you include those with the Democrats, they still only have 47 to the Republicans' 53. So right now, the Democrats are coming from behind because they have less senators. They currently have a minority, while Republicans have a majority. But if you look here, Democrats already hold 35 seats that aren't up for election, while Republicans only hold 30 seats that aren't up for election. So really, Republicans have more to lose than Democrats. But Republicans also hold a lot more of these seats that are up for election currently than Democrats do. So basically, I want to talk about in this video which candidate I think is most likely to win the Senate seat in each state, whether it's the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate. Similar to last week's video, I'm going to be using this website called 538.com, and it's a really useful website because their predictions for the elections are really accurate. I've said this many times on this channel, but their prediction for the 2016 presidential election outcome was pretty spot on. Gave Trump a 30% chance of winning, and that's right around what I think he had a chance of winning. Because he barely won in the end, he won only by 3 of the Rust Belt states, but most websites gave him a 5 to 10% chance of winning, while 538 wasn't being so. They weren't underestimating Trump, they gave him a 30% chance of winning, which I would say was pretty spot on. The way that they project these elections, the way that they do the projections, they use all sorts of complex mathematical formulas, and they do like a bunch of trial elections, and they, based on those trial elections, they come up with the chance that each candidate has of winning a certain election. And I think that these models that this website has, can really be trusted, and they're pretty accurate. So this is a website that I'm going to be using, that I'll be referring to a lot in this video to help me make my predictions. Anyway, let's begin now. First, let's start by talking about the safe Republican seats and the safe Democratic seats. So these are seats that I would say that either the Republicans or the Democrats have like around 90% chance of winning, or at least an 80% chance of winning, meaning that there's almost no chance of them going either Republican or Democrat one way or the other. So we're gonna start with safe Democratic seats. These are gonna be the solid blue seats. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Delaware, all these northeastern Senate seats, they're all going to be pretty safe seats for Democrats. There's almost no chance of a Republican winning any of these Senate elections. Democrats almost always win the northeastern Senate elections, and if you look at 538.com, the chance of the Democrats winning all these Senate seats is probably like well above 90%. I can actually check right now, and I can take a look. Yeah, Delaware is like above 99%. So is like the Massachusetts one. Yeah, almost certain that Democrats are going to win those. Same with Illinois and New Mexico. Those are all safe Democratic seats because I would say all of them have a well above an 80% chance of being won by Democrats in the 2020 Senate election, as well as Oregon, which I forgot a second ago. These are the safe Democratic seats, which brings the Democrats to 43. Now let's go to the Republican safe seats. These include Idaho, Wyoming, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Alabama would normally be safe, but since it's currently a Democratic incumbent, and incumbents usually do slightly better than non-incumbents in elections, I'm not going to put this as safe. South Carolina, I'd say, is safe. Kentucky is safe, and West Virginia and Tennessee. All of these are safe states for Republicans, meaning Republicans almost certain to win all of these Senate seats. There's a slight chance that Democrats get a surprise win in one of these states, but it's really unlikely. If you go to 538.com, a lot of these seats have the Republican candidates winning with well above an 80% chance. Now let's go to the lean states, or likely first, and then we get to lean. So likely seats for the Republicans, we're going to start with that since we're already on the red. Alaska is likely. I was thinking of putting this as safe, but apparently Dan Sullivan's opponent is actually doing kind of well in the polls, so I'm going to just to be safe, keep it as a likely. Same with Texas, because Texas used to be a safe seat for Republicans both at the presidential and the state level. But in recent years, I've talked about this many times on this channel. I've even made an entire video on it. Texas has been moving more and more towards the left in recent years, so it's slowly becoming more and more Democratic, and that's why I'm only putting it as a likely seat right now. But John Cornyn, I'm pretty sure, is going to win re-election without much trouble. And also, Iowa I would have originally put likely, but now it's more of a lean, or even tilt, Republican. Republicans don't have as good of a chance as before of winning that. But Alabama, though, Alabama I'm putting likely. The only reason why I'm not putting safe, I just talked about, the current Senate seat that's up for re-election is by Doug Jones, who's a Democrat. Since he's an incumbent, he has a slightly better chance of winning re-election, but because he's in Alabama, that chance is still really low. I'd also mark both Georgia seats as likely. I'm tempted to put these as lean, but because Georgia has been moving consistently to the left in recent years, kind of like Texas, but not as quickly as Texas, I'd say. So I'm going to still put Georgia seats as likely, both of them to be more exact. Am I missing any more likely Republicans? Oh yeah, Montana. Montana would usually be a safe state for Republicans, I'd say, even though one of the Senate seats is currently held by a Democrat in Montana, surprisingly. But the reason why I'm not putting it as safe but only as likely, I'm kind of tempted to even put it towards lean, but the reason is because the current incumbent, Steve Daines, is being challenged by Steve Bullock. A lot of people know him just because of his 2020 presidential election run, and despite him dropping out early on, Steve Bullock, and not doing well in the polls, he was getting like 2% by the time he dropped out in the polls. Despite that, that helped him gain name recognition, and because of that, a lot more people know who he is now. And he was the former governor of Montana, what am I saying? Montana, so that also gave him more name recognition in the state of Montana. Okay, now we have all the likely Republican seats. Likely Democratic seats. Colorado is really likely to be won by John Hickenlooper, despite him not being the incumbent, because Colorado has been trending steadily towards Democrats. Same with Virginia. Virginia, I put lean, but likely. Same with Michigan, Minnesota. The funny thing about these states is that in the election, the presidential election, they've been swing states in recent elections, but in the Senate, they're usually likely Democratic seats. Now let's go to the lean Democratic seats. These are, I'd say, swing states, but in the recent polls, all these states have been showing promising results for Democrats. These include Arizona, North Carolina, and Maine. All of these are currently held by Republicans, and all three of these seats are seats that Democrats need to win if they want to get a majority in the Senate. But I think that Democrats have a decent chance of winning all three of these Senate seats, because if you go to 538.com, Sarah Gideon, 58% chance of winning Maine, above half. Same with Cunningham in North Carolina, 63% chance. And if you go to Arizona, Kelly has an even better chance, 77% chance. And the thing with Arizona is that Democrats already won the Senate seat here in 2018. Kirsten Sinema beat Martha McSally in the Senate race, but then Martha McSally still got to fill the Senate seat when the other vacancy had to be filled. So I think all these three states are lean Democrat, which leaves us with Iowa. Iowa I would have originally put as likely Republican, but because Democrats have been showing more promising results in the recent polls in the state, I'm only going to put as lean. Well, that leaves us with a 50-50 tie. Republicans at 50, Democrats at 50. And for now, I'm actually going to leave that as my prediction. And what this means, though, what does this mean? 50-50 tie. That means you have a deadlock in the Senate. What happens if there's a deadlock in the Senate? The vice president has to cast the tiebreaker vote. So really, whoever has control of the Senate could actually be determined on the winner of the presidential election. And that would be a really interesting scenario, because then the presidential election has even more importance on it. Right now, the presidential election already has a lot of weight placed on it. You have the Supreme Court vacancy that needs to be filled. There's that, and then you have the COVID-19 pandemic that needs to be dealt with. Already a lot is on the line for this election, but if you have a 50-50 tie in the Senate, that's going to make the presidential election even more important. And this might not necessarily be a good thing, because then you're going to have more bitterness, more divisiveness in the presidential election, because now there's more weight, more on the line for the presidential election, so people on both sides might get more angry over the results, whether or not they go a certain way or not. I'm not looking forward to this, if I'm being honest, but I think I'm going to stop the video here. In tomorrow's video, I'm going to talk about the debate topics, what topics I think are going to be talked about in the debate tomorrow, because tomorrow is the first presidential election debate, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And I'm going to talk about the topics I think that'll be talked about in that. But I'm going to end the video here. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you tune into tomorrow's video. See you then.